Now that we define what an angle is, now we're going to talk about the relationship between a pair of angles. Our first definition would be adjacent angles. And adjacent angles are two angles that share a common vertex and a common side. Take this angle 1 for example. I'm going to get the vertex of angle 1, and I'm just going to call it vertex A, or point A. Then I get another angle, we'll call it angle 2, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine these two angles so that the vertex is the same and that they have a side in common, or also a ray in common. Now you see here that both this angle 1 and this angle 2 have vertex A here that they have in common. So the vertex A is a common vertex, and we also have a common side. And if you're looking at these two angles, the common side, if you thought this middle one, then you'd be correct. And to name it, we're going to have another point, and we'll call it point B, and that common side would be ray AB. Our second definition is complementary angles. So two angles that sum up to 90 degrees would be complementary angles. Okay? So remember, the word sum means to add up. So if any two angles add up to 90 degrees, they're going to be considered complementary. So we'll take this acute angle 1 here, and we'll take another angle 2. Okay? And if the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is 90, then we're going to say that these angles are 90 degrees. And complementary, which add up to 90. Okay? And then sometimes you'll see it like this when they're adjacent. I'm going to go back and show you this once again. So right here, they're non-adjacent. They don't have a common side and a common vertex. But when I put them together, like so that they're adjacent, then you'll see that they make a perfect corner. And to say that they're going to be 90 degrees, we can put either the number 90, or we can put this little square there to signify that they're 90. Now I'm going to put two angles down here. And I mean, there's a bunch of combinations of angles that can be complementary. There's a million different combinations. For example, I can have two angles that are 50 and 40. If you add 50 plus 40, that will give you 90. And therefore, these two angles on the bottom there are complementary. Or you can have 30 and 60. And if you add 30 plus 60, that gives you 90 again. So those two angles are also complementary. And you can do a bunch of different combinations. As long as they add up to 90, they're going to be complementary. For example, 10 plus 80 is 90, so these two angles are complementary. And 1 plus 89 there is 90, so those angles are complementary. Very similar definition will be supplementary angles. And supplementary angles are two angles that sum up to 180 degrees. Okay? Now, if you remember correctly, 180 degree angle is a straight angle. Okay? Now we can have two angles that are non-adjacent. I'll give you an example here. I can draw angle 1 there, and I can draw angle 2 there. But as long as the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to 180, then these angles are going to be said to be supplementary. Okay? Now once again, these are non-adjacent, but if I put them together so that this vertex is the same as that vertex, and one of these sides is the same as that side, like so, then those are going to be supplementary and adjacent. But you notice here that this angle, if I were to make that arc is half a circle, and half a circle is 180. And same thing like the last time. You can have a bunch of different combinations of numbers that add up to 180. For example, you can have an angle that's 30 and another one that's 150. If you add them, 30 plus 150 is 180. That will give you supplementary angles. You can have 10 plus 170, those two will be supplementary. 80 plus 100, that would be 180, that would be supplementary, and so on and so on. There's a bunch of combinations. Okay, so for example 1, it says name a pair of adjacent angles, complementary angles, and supplementary angles. So the first one, adjacent angles, that they have to have a common vertex, and I kind of highlighted it there for you. T is the only two angles that have a common vertex. This angle Y here on the right side, it doesn't share a common vertex with any other angle, so this angle is not adjacent to any other angle. But these two here on the left are going to be adjacent, not because of two things, because they have a common vertex T, and this side here right in the middle is the common side. Okay? So our answer would be this one on the left, which we can call angle UTV. Okay, angle UTV is the left angle. And if I look at this 110-degree angle, angle VTW would be the second angle. So these two angles are once again adjacent. And adjacent, they can add up to whatever. It doesn't have to be 90, it doesn't have to be 180, as long as they're just next to each other like so. Next one, complementary. If you remember, complementary means two angles that add up to 90. Okay, two angles that add up to 90. So if I look at the picture here, which two numbers can I add up to get 90? And well, it's kind of obvious here that this 20-degree plus this 70-degree angle are going to add up to 90 degrees. Okay? So the answer would be this small angle here on the left and this bigger angle here on the right. But together, angle UTV, once again, UTV is the left one, and angle XYZ would be the right one. Those two angles are going to be complementary. And the last one, supplementary angles. And so if you remember, supplementary angles are angles that add up to 180. So looking at the picture on the right, which two angles can I add that would equal to 180 when I add them up? And once again, this is kind of an easy question here because 110 plus 70 will give us 180. So this angle here on the right and this angle by itself will be supplementary because they add up to 180. So this one we can call it BTW, and the right one we can call it XYZ. Okay, next relationship would be a linear pair, and this one you're going to see quite a bit. So make sure you pay close attention to this one and that you understand it, because you're going to see this word over and over. We're going to see linear pairs throughout the whole year quite a bit. Okay, so a linear pair are two angles that are adjacent and supplementary. Okay, so remember, supplementary has to add up to 180, and adjacent kind of has to have they have to have the same vertex and a common side. Okay? Basically, they have to be next to each other. The thing about the linear pair is that they're always going to form a line. Okay? The key word there is linear. You see the word line, and so anytime you see two angles that form a line, they're going to be a linear pair. Okay? For example, here's one angle, angle 1, but I need to have two angles. So my second angle, if you see this side going to the left here, or that ray, I can make it into a line by kind of drawing a ray to the right side like so. And then this angle 2 and this angle 1 will make a line on the bottom, and they're going to be supplementary. Why? Because from here to here it will be half a circle, and that's 180. And they're adjacent because they have a common vertex here and a common side there. Okay. So basically, anytime you see two angles that make a line, that's going to be a linear pair. Now let's dive a little bit further into this here. So remember, a straight angle is just a straight line. Okay, and this measures 180 degrees once again because this is half a circle if I were to make this little arc here. But a linear pair would be just any other any other ray. If I kind of make a ray going this way, they don't have two angles. So basically, I'll show you an animation here. If I stop this anywhere, but anywhere that I draw a ray, anywhere up here, it will be two angles that make a straight line, and therefore there would be a linear pair. The next relationship is the vertical angles, and once again, this one's a very important one. Vertical angles is one that you have to kind of remember for the rest of the year, because you're going to see vertical angles non-stop in almost every single chapter. Yeah, but vertical angles are two angles that are opposite of each other, or we can also call them non-adjacent when two lines intersect. So if you look at this picture on the right here, there's four angles. I'm going to name them for you. Angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, and angle 4. Okay, so when we say opposite, it means on the other side. Okay? For example, if you look at angle 1, which one is on the other side opposite of angle 1? Well, 2 is next to, which we call adjacent. 4 is next to, which we call adjacent. But if you look at 1 and 3, they're like on the opposite sides of each other. So 1 and 3 are going to be what we call vertical angles. Okay, so 1 and 3 are vertical angles. Oops, I don't know how these ended up here. Let's go back. Okay, so 1 and 3 are vertical angles. Okay, and then but these are not the only opposite ones. Okay, if you look at angle 2, well, which one's opposite of angle 2? Well, the one opposite over here in the bottom will be 4. Okay, so those two are also vertical angles. Tell whether the angles are vertical angles, a linear pair, or neither. So for A, 1 and 2. Okay? So if you look at 1 and 2 here, you'll notice that if you kind of ignore everything else, but 1 and 2 are going to make this straight line down here. And if I make this little arc like angle 1 plus angle 2 together like so, that's half a circle. Okay, that's half a circle. And a half a circle means that it's going to be 180. So two angles that are adjacent and they form a line and they're supplementary. That's what we call a linear pair. For part B, 1 and 3, okay, now if you look at 1 here and 3, they're not next to each other, but they're like opposite of each other. They're made by this line going this way and this line going this way. And when you have two lines crossing, like so, these opposite angles are what we call vertical angles, okay, vertical angles. And you can also say like 2 and 4 are vertical angles, but here the question was 1 and 3, they are vertical angles. But 2 and 4 are also vertical angles. For 7 and 8, over here 7 and 8, notice that once again, these two angles are next to each other, they're adjacent, and they also kind of, if I draw my little arc going like so, these are going to be 180 because they make half a circle, or they make a straight line is another way of thinking it. And so when you have two angles that make a straight line and they're next to each other, that's called a linear pair. For part D, 3 and 6, if you look at 3 is up here and 6 is over here, they're not adjacent, so they're not going to be next to each other like this. They cannot be a linear pair, and they're not vertical angles because they're not opposite of each other when two lines cross. Okay, so in this case is an example of a neither. Okay? 6 and 3 don't really have a special name. And then 5 and 6, if you look at 5 and 6 here, they are adjacent because they have this common vertex here and they have this common ray or this common side. And once again, when they're next to each other and they kind of make half a circle like that, they're supplementary and they make a straight line. Therefore, that is an example of a linear pair.